Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. You code DNVR when you sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boost every single day. Rudo, Jesse, Megan coming to you live on an off day for the Colorado Avalanche. I'm going to be honest. This conversation might actually boil down to which NHL player has the most Riz. But
what?
For us laymen's, we're talking about the face of the NHL today. So we'll see. We'll see where the conversation goes, because I don't think it's immediately clear who the face of the NHL is currently. It's depending on how you want to look at it. Who's the best player in the NHL right now? It's Connor McDavid. Okay, fine. But is he the face of the NHL? Does he put himself out there? Is he interesting enough in interviews? Do people not in Canada that are casual fans know who Connor McDavid is?
Was that a rhetorical question, setting up the show, or were you asking?
No, I'm asking.
No. I'm sure they've heard the name, but I don't think they could identify him. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's interesting. I'm racking my... Oh, sorry.
No. You're good.
I'm racking my brain to when I was being introduced to hockey, how there were obvious faces of the NHL. Like, even Gretzky still had his footprint on the landscape of hockey, Sidney Crosby, obviously, but Connor McDavid has not carried in a similar fashion. And I would say that Sidney Crosby, just as an example, had the most wild personality there, but I still can recall marketing campaigns that featured him and videos that I watched that were a little funny or interesting that don't spring to mind in the same way with Connor McDavid. And so I don't even want to dunk on him personally that he's just not that interesting. I don't know that he's even been marketed in the same way that I've seen other past faces of the NHL. Sidney Crosby being a great example of it, that I also don't think to not hockey people. A sport that's already sort of struggling with national recognition, I don't know that his face has earned the recognition the way that other faces who've come before him have.
So if we're just jumping into this, I disagree. I think it is on Connor McDavid. I think the league has tried their hardest to jam Connor McDavid down everybody's throat, and he's just the least interesting person in pro sports. I think he's the most talented hockey player that has ever existed, ever. But I think he is so unbelievably lame and boring. The picture of him in the airport with the two older grandparents is Connor McDavid in a nutshell. And I just think that, to your point, Megan, I think the past stars of the game, like Sid and Ovi, I think they understood their role in growing the game and making NHL more popular, and that, they understood that part of that rested on them. And to me, McDavid, and I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but he just has I'm just here to play hockey. I don't really care about anything else. I just want to go out there and play hard and skate fast and score goals. And that's it. And the NHL's can you give us something? You're the most electrifying player we've ever seen. Give us this much personality. And I just don't think he has it in him. I don't think it's a knock on him. He's just not that guy. In the same way that Nate, just not that guy.
And here's my problem. Does the NHL have that guy?
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of guys not everybody wants it to be.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second. You brought up Nathan MacKinnon. I have a bit of confusion here in Colorado because, let alone who is the face of the NHL, who is the face of the Avalanche? Is it Cale Makar or is it Nathan MacKinnon, or is it Gabe Landeskog? Because I feel like you could make an argument for all three.
Here's how the question is always posed to me. If you sent each of those dudes one by one through Cherry Creek, who would be recognized the most from one end to the next?
I feel like all three of them would be criminally unrecognized. So
I think Landeskog has an edge. He's been with the organization as a captain. I think he's very recognizable. And he is very engaging and charismatic and has done fun things with marketing, like those Nuggets Avalanche crossovers with Gary Harris. Those were really fun, and they show a little bit of his personal side. I think it'd be Landeskog.
I agree with both statements there. I think you'd be shocked at how far those dudes could walk without getting recognized. One, but two, Megan, I think you're right. I do think Gabe Landeskog is the face of the franchise, and he's embraced that the most, and he's done the most to, like we were just talking about, like McDavid and Crosby. He understands that. He understands that he has a responsibility to be the face of the team. And so I'm with you. I think it would be Gabe. I think he's the face of this team.
So here's my problem. Gabe is the one we actually have video proof of going out on the streets of Denver and not being recognized by people. Altitude actually did a thing on that a couple years ago. Now, given the Avs just won the cup, I think they're probably a little bit more recognizable now. I hope.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that there were a lot of people who didn't recognize Gabe Landeskog a couple years
ago. And that should tell you everything, because they were like, who can we pick that we think some people would recognize? And the fact that it was him, and he was still, to your original point, Rudo, very under-recognized. I do think it's Gabe, and I think it's partially because, one, he's the captain, and two, to Megan's point, he has done a lot to put himself in that position to own that. And then just when he's in the lineup, the way that he has always dealt with the media after games and things like that, never shied away from answering questions, standing in after their 11th straight loss in that 48-point season, their third 11-game losing streak of the year. Like, he hung in there for everything, and he's gone out of his way to make himself the face. I think to be the face of a franchise, of a league, of a whatever, you have to want to be that. And that's where I think Nathan MacKinnon would openly tell you he doesn't want that. When he was asked about potentially becoming captain, when Gabe was, right after Gabe had signed the extension, right up at the 11th hour, people asked him, like, would you have wanted to be the captain? He was like, no, that is the last thing on earth I want, is to be captain of this team. I just want to show up, do my work, score a bunch of goals, and go home. You have to want that pressure and all of that, and I think Gabe welcomes it.
And I think the energy was matched too. I think back to when Landeskoging was the thing, in the same way that like Tebowing became a thing with Broncos. Landeskoging didn't take off in the same way, but that wasn't something that Landeskog initiated himself. It was something that I'm guessing like the team and the fan base created around him, that I'm sure you could find a thing for MacKinnon or Makar that you could make in the same vein. But I think it is notable that that is something that was shaped around Landeskog. And it was an important moment too. Like, he's playing, he's sick as a dog. He has this incredible moment. So they absolutely had reason to create this too.
And the other thing that I feel like even like we forget sometimes, because there have been so many great players that have now come in behind him that have also been really high draft picks, first round, all-stars, first team, all NHL. Like Gabe Landeskog, like, you are talking about he's number two overall pick, youngest captain in NHL history at one point, captain in his second year with the Avalanche. You're right, Megan. Like, I think we can forget sometimes that, especially that rookie season, like, he was the 18-year-old phenom coming into the organization, and there was a lot of attention on him. It wasn't until a couple years later when Nathan MacKinnon came in, that next wave. So I let's make sure we don't forget that, like, Gabe Landeskog is a higher draft pick than Cale Makar. You know what I mean? And youngest captain in NHL history for a few years there. Like, he's got some clout on his name too.
All valid points. I'm 100% willing to accept that Gabe Landeskog is the face of the Colorado Avalanche. But if you had to pick an Av to be the face of the NHL, I think it has to be Cale Makar.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm with you. I just don't think Nathan MacKinnon is even remotely close to that guy, despite being, one of the three best players in the world potentially.
Yep.
With Makar, one, he's doing things that no one else ever is doing.
Yep.
So that's going to catapult him to the forefront as well. And while he does have a little bit of the hockeyitis where nobody has any character traits and they're all just the same human being all the time in interviews, there's at least a little bit of something there with Cale. You have to drill pretty deep, but you get him drinking a Slurpee out of the Stanley Cup. You get that one commercial with him and Landeskog, even though everyone hated it.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Okay. Is Cale Makar a good enough face of the NHL, or do you really need someone who has a little bit more, a little pizzazz to them?
I think it's okay to have a few stars. One, because of the differences in positions. I think what Cale Makar brings about to being a face of the NHL is really groundbreaking in terms of him being a defenseman. I think the last closest to this I've seen was Erik Karlsson, and it comes down to who is going to have an influence over young players who are just having their interest in hockey sparked. And that is going to be someone like Cale Makar, who is going to influence the way that young players want to play the game, the position that they want to play. Yep. And I think he is affected that positionally in a way that is very different, because we've seen a lot of forwards as the face of the NHL, in a Crosby, in an Ovechkin, and to have Makar be what he is because he's a defenseman, I think is important. And as you mentioned, the lore that's building around who Makar the person is too, I think can carry some weight, that this is someone who rejected a penalty and his spending is on Slurpees and he thinks Costco is unreal. There is definitely a personality there that is relatable and wholesome, that I think. The other thing too is, because it is a sport that is struggling a little bit nationally, that's why there's maybe an argument to be made for several faces of the NHL, to pick a face from other markets that are very popular, where hockey is very popular. So maybe like you pick somebody out east, and Makar is a good representative for someone in the west. But I am very pro Makar being a face of the NHL. I just think there might have to be a few, just because of what they're trying to combat nationally to get attention.
I think he's one, like Megan said, I genuinely do. I think Cale Makar is changing the way that you play defense, and the way that not just NHL teams, but hockey teams of all ages and all levels look at defensemen. Which is not insignificant, that you don't have a lot of those guys that come around. You have a lot of very good players. To change the way the position is doing that, I think he's an electrifying player, that to the point that kind of kicked this whole conversation off. If you are saying, my favorite story is when my family first moved to Colorado, and it was the Avs' first season that next year. My mom knew nothing about hockey, nothing. My dad turned on a game, and my mom stood there, watched TV. She goes, wow, that number 19 guy is really good. When someone who knows nothing about a sport can identify who the best players are, that's how you know someone is special. And I think if you showed someone who had never watched an NHL game, an Avs game, they would immediately be drawn to a guy like Cale Makar, in terms of he stands out in the sense of like what he does on the ice. And then, well, I don't remember which of you said it, like, yeah, I think it was you, Rue. Like, you have to dig pretty deep to get to that like personality. But what I like about Cale is he's willing anything that people ask him to do, anything the NHL asks him to be a part of, he's willing to do it. He's willing to try. It's a little awkward sometimes. He can maybe look a little stiff or a little uncomfortable, but he's out there and he's getting more comfortable, and he's trying to do it because he understands the role that he plays in this. In that, like, he needs to be, able to appeal to new fans and young kids coming up who want to play the game and things like that. And so I appreciate that he tries.
First of all, you're a little laggy, big hockey, trying to keep their secrets under wraps, confirmed. Secondly, that last bit and what Mary commented in the chat here is kind of what I'm getting at. Yes. People that are already into hockey, lots of people understand Cale Makar and what a special talent he is. But you get these guys on the national stage, and I go walk up to someone who doesn't know anything about hockey, and I don't think they're going to know the name Cale Makar. And that's where I'm not even blaming this on Cale Makar and NHLers and their.
Wait. You said if you walk up to who?
If I walk to someone who doesn't know anything about hockey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Again, not even blaming the players and their lack of personality and all of that. It's just this weird area where the NHL is at, where they don't quite have the national recognition that I think certainly football does. I think basketball has more recognition as well.
I think baseball struggles similarly to hockey, maybe a little bit better.
There, I think they might do a little bit better job with their faces, like a Mike Trout or something like that. But yeah, they're not that far off from baseball, I would say. So,
what's
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but what's funny about that is isn't it funny that we can definitively say, I think we can all very clearly agree, NFL, NBA are years ahead of where the NHL is at in terms of marketability for its players. I think we can all agree that baseball is probably a little ahead, but not much, not a ton. And the MLB and the NHL are the two most traditional, old guard, don't want things to change. And the NFL and NBA is like, how do we get new fans here? How do we attract? The NFL is its own beast. We could do an entire show about why the NFL is so much different than the NHL in terms of the way it markets everything. But both of those leagues they understand that the sport is almost secondary in those leagues. It's all about the entertainment and getting people in the door and the spectacle and the event and the this and the that. As an observer, I appreciate that. I do feel like the NHL is really focused on, we want the best product on the ice, because I think the NHL believes, right, wrong, indifferent, that hockey is the best sport to watch. And I think the NHL operates, well, as long as we have the best product on the ice, as long as we have the most exciting, entertaining sport, people will come watch it. And again, while that's great in theory, you do have to market this. You do have to push it, because hockey can be a complicated game. There's a lot of rules. It's hard to follow. It moves quick. The puck is really small. You have to invite people in and say, come be a part of this, and we'll show you why it's great. And that's where again, back to McDavid, while I do think he is just kind of a wet sometimes, you have to say, hey, come see how electrifying this guy is. This is what we get all the time. This is what's on display every single night. And the NHL just doesn't do a good enough job of that on the whole.
Looking at some of the chat, I feel like this could be a personal opinion, but most hockey players I've known are very quirky. They have a very quirky sense of humor. They are sassy, sarcastic, like a lot of them. That I don't know that I think they're all really boring. I do think that they reserve that side of themselves from media generally. And so I do think, as Rudo mentioned with Cale specifically, but with players generally, that there are personalities in a lot of them just waiting to be covered, especially among each other. You see a lot of the personality and how they interact with one another. This is why I think, and I don't know outside of all hockey people how this performed, but like the Road to the Winter Classic series with the Flyers and Brizgalov. I think that things like that, especially, I'm kind of deviating from the point too, but rivalry-based things bring outside fans into the sport that might be
people love drama.
People love drama, and so it's like, okay, maybe it's hard to sell them on a singular person, but maybe we can sell them on drama and conflict, perceived conflict. But that was a separate point. The other point being that I do think a lot of hockey players on the whole do have good personalities. They just don't really show them outside of how they interact with one another. And that's where I think there's a little bit that could be tapped into.
So I think that's a great point, because I talk about it all the time, and it's applicable in several different situations. Hockey is unique in the way that in terms of the road that players take to get there. To play in the NHL, you not go through in the vast majority of cases. You do not have a typical high school experience. A lot of times you leave home very early, either within your own country or sometimes on the other side of the world you leave to pursue this goal. They spend, I think, more time at the rink than you see other sports, at the gym, at the field, at the whatever. Hockey players coming up, the ones that make it to the NHL, spend 90% of their time with the team, in the locker rooms, on the buses. So you're right, Megan, like they have really funny personality. Like they almost have their own little like infrastructure of like a little city, and you have your own hierarchy, and these are the jokesters and this and that. There's just so much time spent together. JT Compher is my ultimate example. When there's no cameras on, that guy is one of the funniest, most entertaining people to just be around in the locker room. The minute you hit record, yeah, no, we thought we played a good game. We got pucks in deep. We worked real hard and blah, blah, blah. And then you stop and he's messing with guys behind the scenes. He's throwing tape at guys that you're interviewing. The day that Logan O'Connor lost the University of Michigan DU bet, we all walked in and JT's telling us like, yep, hey, Logan's talking. Logan's got a plenty for you guys today. Like, go talk to him, whatever. Or whoever it was. I think it was Cale. Actually, it was UMass. And it's just like, that's a great example of exactly what you're talking about. These guys are funny. They're interesting. They're quirky. They have things to say. They've seen and done a lot. They, for whatever reason, just shield so much of that from anybody outside of that locker room.
I do think it's a culture thing that you need to encourage some of these players to be themselves a little bit more in front of the cameras and with media, but we could talk about that a little bit more after we tell you about Illegal Pete's, because if you're going to listen to boring hockey players, you might as well be eating a delicious burrito while you do it. I mean, something's got to make that a little bit better. They also have a special going on for Super Bowl Sunday. They're doing happy hour all day. So be sure to get in and go check out Illegal Pete's. Get yourself whatever you need from them, both a burrito and some delicious margaritas or otherwise. They've got you covered. Delicious stuff all the way around. Again, can't recommend it enough. One over by the bar. Great place to pregame before coming down to the DNVR bar for whatever it is you might be doing. 10 different locations here in Colorado to check out. A bunch of fresh ingredients that'll take care of you no matter what you need. And we're also brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. If you bring a new account, you sign up with code DNVR, you go bet $5 on the Super Bowl, you get $200 in free bets to go bet on whatever you want. Whether that's thinking, I don't think you can bet on interviews. I don't think DraftKings goes quite that far. You can't bet on whether someone's going to call Leon Draisaitl pissy or not. But you can bet on some adventurous stuff, to say the least, when it comes to DraftKings. Not just limited to humans. There are animal races that you can bet on too. In the past, they've had the turtle races. Of course, they have things like Kentucky Derby and all of the horse racing, big ones. So go check it out. Go over to DraftKings Sportsbook today. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. Void in Ohio. And of course, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Second period, the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I want to sidetrack us for just a second. We'll get back to this conversation as a whole in a minute. But if you guys didn't know, LeBron James just broke the all-time NBA scoring record last night. And I want to have a couple of conversations here. One, who do you guys think is the LeBron James of the NHL? It's Ovi, right?
Yep. I don't know. I don't know.
Fair enough.
It's so hard because I was actually just talking about this with someone a couple weeks ago. Whose career would you rather have, Sidney Crosby or LeBron James? Take the money out of it.
LeBron, I think.
And like it's funny because like Sidney Crosby, 3 championships, captain of one team his entire career, owns the city of Pittsburgh at this point, basically. And like, I think there is something to be said that like, that's the team that drafted him 1 overall. He helped build him up. They won a championship. There was a dip. He built them back up. They won 2 more championships. And this is where like the hockey purist in me is just like, see, I'd rather have that than LeBron James's, 4 teams and 6-year, whatever championship chasing. I'm not criticizing him. Like, the dude won. He's amazing. He's the NBA's all-time leading point getter. He's an unbelievable player. But I don't know. I don't know who's the LeBron of the NHL. It's Crosby or Ovi. I'd honestly probably say Crosby just because of the way that he kind of dominated the overall game for such a long stretch there. Megan?
It's the part of the show where Megan just says, I hate basketball. And we move on.
So it's I actually, of sports that aren't hockey, I actually do enjoy basketball, but I still, if I had a choice of playing hockey for a living or playing basketball for a living, no matter how much success I could achieve at either, I would pick hockey. So it is nothing against basketball, but there's something about the longevity of basketball, like being able to play into older ages, that I think, I don't want to say is unique to basketball either. They're both sports that are hard on the body, but for that reason, I think Ovechkin has a little bit of that edge in that I think he has several seasons left in him too. That is why he is able to chase some of these records that he has, and that's why maybe the comparison to LeBron feels close in that way, but both Crosby and Ovechkin belong there. It's just the longevity of it that I think is interesting, because there are really talented players whose careers end around 35.
I think there's definitely an argument to be made for Crosby. Someone in the chat was saying Mario Lemieux or Yager. Sure. I'm willing to entertain all of those ideas.
Yager doesn't get enough conversation as the GOAT. Does not get enough runway as the greatest of all time. Huge Yager guy.
For the moment, let me go with Ovi so I can get to the next part of this question.
Yeah, sorry.
And we saw when LeBron, if you were on Twitter, when LeBron broke the record, there was this weird conversation about his celebration of it. And a lot of people liked it. A lot of people didn't like it. There's a similar thing in hockey, right? Where a lot of people get annoyed when players celebrate too much. I'm not in that camp. We've had this conversation before. I think players should celebrate everything. I think they should absolutely go off. That Jack Hughes celebration the other year where he threw his stick into the crowd, I think is amazing.
Sick.
And to me, that's the type of things that the NHL needs to target to be more approachable and relatable to people. We've already seen it. The NFL significantly loosened their celebration rules a couple years ago. Basketball has always been very, very loose with its celebrations.
See, this is hard. It's hard for me because I have personal feelings about this. Where I've just always been
because you're a hockey person.
I know, and that's why it's hard. That's why I'm saying it's hard, because I was even jokingly yelling at all the Nuggets fans in the bar last night. The Nuggets were up by 40 in the first quarter, and they were celebrating every bucket like it was and 5 seconds left. Someone hits a half-court three, and it's just, for me, it's act like you've been there before.
I think there's an argument to be made that basketball may have taken this to its extreme.
Yeah. Now here's the other thing I will say, because I like, in this vein, I like that right now, and it's not exclusive to Ovechkin. We've seen this happen plenty of times over the years, but when a significant record falls, whether it be franchise, league, whatever, a significant milestone is reached, you'll see the entire team pour off the bench and come celebrate with the player. And Ovi's teammates were doing that for every player that he passed going up the ranks, and obviously now there's only one to go. So I do like that. I thought it was so bizarre that last night LeBron James breaks the record and they stopped the game in the third quarter to bring out media, to bring out his family. They gave him a hot mic that was into the ESPN feed, that was in the speakers at crypto.com arena. I thought it was really odd how the game came to a grinding halt to acknowledge this, when they were 14 seconds from the end of the quarter. Let the end of the quarter run out and then do all that. I just thought it was really weird. And that's something weird that I think I've seen the NBA do a few times. And I would hate that.
I think there's a middle ground too, that the NHL has so much room to embrace more of individual celebrations. I do appreciate in hockey when players can discern when it is appropriate to celebrate. And I think they withhold though a little too much, but you're right. Like I do appreciate when a player is honestly, like I think of Matt Duchene a little bit in this conversation, but there will be games where goals get scored and it doesn't have an impact on the overall outcome of the game. And I can see, especially if it's like you are trailing by several goals, you maybe don't celebrate that goal. I can understand that, especially if the team performance and effort wasn't there. But looking at how the NHL embraced Storm Surge with Carolina, I think there's room for improvement here because I didn't see the harm in that. That was after a game. It was for the home crowd and it was for fans. I don't see the harm in that. I think that's absolutely something fun that they should celebrate and lean into. And it's why I really appreciated that Winnipeg did individual goal songs. And I think that's something that we could, as the league, embrace a little bit.
Stop undervaluing individual player milestones. I don't care. When it happened, I didn't care. I was happy for Duchene that he got 30 and did not care at all that he celebrated, to be honest.
See, so I will be real. I actually thought in that exact moment, we all make fun of because it was a legendary press conference from Patrick Waugh after, or I guess infamous if you want to look at it that way. But what I actually liked about the Duchene one was he threw his hands up and then you can actually see the moment where he realizes where it's like, why am I this excited? We just got our asses handed to us on home ice. So again, the reason, because I understand where you're coming from, Rudo. Like it's hard to score a goal in the NHL, but like I like when players are aware of the moment. Because to me, when a player doesn't celebrate a goal when they're down by 5, that's the competitiveness where it's like, why would I be happy about that? I cannot stand, of all things in sports, I actually think my least favorite thing in all of pro sports, and I'm being hyperbolic here, it's watching an NFL defensive player when they're down by 35 tackle someone for a loss and get up and flex looking right into the camera. It's like, hey, dude, they've made you look like an idiot for the last 2.5 hours. Congratulations. You got one. You look like a clown.
Okay, but that content's not for you.
I know, but I like who is excited about that? Who's excited about
fans who just want to go to the game and be part of like a party? All right.
Every
time they don't care that the score's 30-6. They just want to see people flex and do the gritty. Like,
right. And so then I don't know, go start a celebration dance competition. I'm sure TLC will pick it up. Like, I just like, I don't know. I want to see. That's why people claim so much to love college sports and the World Juniors. It's because these kids don't have, like, they're not making money. This is just like, they just do it. And the NCAA, that's changed a little bit in the last couple of years. But like World Juniors, the reason the celebrations are so big is because those kids are just there for they're just passionate about it. It's just raw emotion and competitiveness. To me, the flexing and getting a group dance together in front of the camera when you're getting your ass kicked on national television late in the fourth quarter, I don't think I don't think anybody's looking for that. Dancing with the Stars is on channel 13. You know what I mean? Like
a children's game for a job. Have a little fun with it if you're even down a bunch of points, man. I don't know.
I wouldn't tell Nathan MacKinnon, hey, you have a children's job. I'm not going to be the one to deliver that message to him.
It's not a children's job. It's
children's game.
Let's get this clear. We're not violating any labor laws here.
I'm the person talking about the Nail Yakupov celly. Loved it. Big goal, big moment, end of the game. Hell yeah. Slide the entire way down the ice on your belly. Great moment. When you're losing by 1,000, stop celebrating.
And here's the thing, like I just don't think
Have
there's
some
that many
pride in what you're
opportunities
doing
to celebrate when you're losing by a bunch anyway. Like there's not nearly enough celebration in close games. Like I'm asking for more than a fist pump and a yeah, let's go. I want to see stuff like when Ovi scored 50 and he did the hot stick. Like
I'm with you. See, I either think go in, but I also think no Selly at all is just cold as hell, and I love it. Like Nate's the king of that. He'll just do something nasty as shit, and then just look around like, oh yeah, just another day at the office. Sorry, no big deal.
And that's cool.
I think that's equally as cool as a huge Selly. But I'm with you, dude. We went through this phase. I actually can't believe we didn't get our asses kicked more. When we were like 19, we could first start playing in men's leagues. We went an entire season where we said, hey, every goal you jump into the glass. And we did on every goal because it's fun. So I'm with you. Either go big or do nothing because that's equally as sick.
Do you remember the Bang Bang dance?
Yeah.
I do remember that.
We just need more dancing. I'm just kidding. We just had a very lengthy conversation about why we weren't crazy about the dance.
I think something like the Bang Bang dance is cool. The problem is they do that after the game is over as they're going into the locker room and everyone's turned the game off. So nobody sees that unless you're like a diehard Avalanche fan. You have no idea what the Bang Bang dance is. I
agree and disagree with you. Part of the reason no one knows what it is because I was during an era where they got to do it 11 times a season. But like the Linus Ullmark and the Swayman thing, like that has become a thing. The Foligno Bobrovsky hugs became a thing. Storm Surge became a thing. I think there is an appetite for it. But I also think one of the points I was going to make earlier, here's the other problem hockey has, and this is where I think the NHL really struggles with how do we appeal to new fans yet satisfy our existing fans. I do think there is a bit of gatekeeping in hockey fans in the sense of like, one, I could just end the sentence there. There's a bit of gatekeeping with hockey fans.
Just a bit.
Two, I think there is like this weird thing, like Paul Bissonnette, love him or hate him, however you feel about him. I don't care. I'm not getting into that conversation, but like they are trying TNT, the NHL, like they are trying to make this guy, a face of the game in one way or the other. But there are people that just don't respect what he has to say because he sucked. Like he just wasn't good. And I think there is this weird thing with hockey fans where, I saw a bunch of people talking about PK Subban earlier. His play just fell off such a cliff that I think a lot of hockey fans just kind of wrote him off. Like, oh, well, he's not any good anymore. Why would I listen to what he has to say? Even though he is super personal and he is a great personality and he knows an insane amount about hockey. And they just won't accept it because he didn't finish his career as an elite player. And I do think that's another part of the problem here is the NFL and the NBA. They're like, hey, if you're interesting, if you have things to say, you dress crazy, you show up to the arena like this, whatever, we're gonna plaster you all over the screen, all over the billboards. And the NHL is like, but are you good? And if you're not a top 5 player in the league, nobody wants to hear from you. I think that's another problem the NHL has that you got to figure out a way to get around. I put Trevor Zegras in the poll earlier, and a bunch of people like turn their noses up, and it's like the NHL invited him to the skills competition last year. He's on the cover of NHL 23. They put him in all kinds of promotional material because he does cool shit, but he's not good enough for some people, and it's wild.
It's time to stop this old boys club mentality, and baseball has this issue as well, where like the old fogies are like, which the sport's supposed to be played a certain way. You do this exact thing. You do. No, let the team do whatever the hell they want, especially if they're a team that's winning. If it's a player that's really good, what are you going to say to him if he's dominating every single night? Like,
right.
I'm not about it. Not about that at all. Let the new era take over.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I think we didn't embrace PK and the personality that he had well when he was a player. And I liked what he brought to the table for the All-Star game. Like, he is a personality that I hope emerges, and they just have to feed into it, though, and give him consistent reps, because I do think he's going to be a great addition to national coverage of the league.
See, I hated what he did at the All-Star game, but that was nothing to do with him and everything to do with the overall event.
It's the structure.
There was no saving that.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where it's like, I like PK being here, but we're already moving so slow. I don't need PK talking for 5 minutes in between these shots. Nothing to do with him.
And kind of to reinforce the same things that you guys have been saying, the other big name when this new deal with TNT and ESPN came out for NHL is, okay, TNT goes out and gets Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky's a big name within hockey, even beyond hockey. People know who Wayne Gretzky is, at least, other than some of these young.
I would say most people do.
Sure. The problem is, okay, you went out and got a name recognition guy. I'm sorry, Wayne Gretzky is a boring on the cast. I am falling asleep.
Yep.
and I don't even blame him because he's Wayne Gretzky. His analysis of hockey is, just do it better because I did.
Right. Well, this is, again, I know all kinds of people have all kinds of thoughts about Barstool and Paul Bissonnette, and that's not what I'm talking about. But again, TNT, it was just funny because we're going to put Paul Bissonnette, this guy who has this huge internet presence, large following on Twitter, a lot of young fans, and you can't argue or deny the success of the Spittin' Chicklets pod. And wow, look at all this. All right, so we got him. What do you think? Wayne Gretzky and Rick Tocchet to go with him on the panel? It's what are we doing? What are we doing here? It's anytime it feels like they make a stride to appeal to that next wave of audience, regardless of how you feel about the personalities they're getting to do that, they then strap them with 2 or 3 old guard hockey traditionalists, and it's you're never going to get anywhere with this. You're just running in place, and it's really frustrating to watch.
Maybe we should be thanking them because that makes people actually tune into my watch-alongs.
Right. Wait, is this true?
I have no idea. Is it
the Avs Stanley Cup thing is on ESPN Plus tonight?
That would be good to know.
It broke earlier. Yeah, it broke right before you guys went live.
Really?
Sick. Well, I know
because
what our Friday show is going to be about.
Very cool.
I was going to say, my sister has been harassing me to find out when this is happening for months.
Tomorrow or tonight, apparently.
It says Thursday. Is today Thursday?
Today is Wednesday.
Yeah, so tomorrow on ESPN Plus. I was just thinking about that last night because, again, my sister texted me, and I was like, I need to ask Avs PR about that when they get back in town. And look at that. Thanks, Ben and Tiff, for confirming.
Easy life like that. On that note, we are brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, which is giving away the ultimate fan experience. All you have to do is go to DNVR Avalanche Twitter account, give us a follow, go to the Breck Brew Twitter account, give us a follow, and then hit the link in the tweet that talks about the ultimate fan experience, and you'll be entered to win. I believe it's tickets in row 5 at Ball Arena for the Avs game on March 3rd or 5th. I forget which day. Now, there you go. March 9th. I wasn't even close. Wasn't even in the ballpark. March 9th, you get row 5 tickets, you get a parking pass, you get access to the rich people area up in Club Lexus, and you get 2 free DNVR shirts of your choice. So you get a little bit of everything when it comes to the ultimate fan package. You got to get in on it. Sponsored by Breck Brew. If you don't get in on it, or if you don't win, at least get yourself some Breck Brew at your local liquor store. All right. Also, when you're going down to the arena, maybe you're driving, maybe you're taking an Uber, something like that. If something unfortunate does happen, if you do get in an accident that's not your fault, you're covered by Bacchus and Shanker. Call them at 222-2222. They will take on your case for completely free. And if you do have a case, they will represent you for free until you win the case. So it costs you literally nothing with these guys, and they have you completely covered. Motorcycle, car, ride share, or even if you get injured at work, they've got you covered. They just want to get you the compensation you deserve. Over the last 25 years, they've won over $1 billion for their clients. So they're pretty good at what they do. We talk about this all the time, but if you're like over the age of 12 in Colorado, you know who Bacchus and Shanker are, right? Like they're everywhere in this state. So you know what's up. If you've been injured, give them a call. Press 2 for a while. Bacchus and Shanker will keep you covered and win what you deserve. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I want to get us a little bit back on topic here and talk about characters because surprisingly, something the NHL does very well is create villains. People like Jordan Binnington. I think a lot of people feel about this way about Matt Tkachuk.
Yep.
I've been trying to figure out why Tkachuk got the low score in the breakaway challenge, the All-Star game, the one judge.
Because what he did was terrible. Everyone should have given him 2s and 1s.
I agree with that take for the most part.
Trouba, that's a really good.
Jacob Trouba, yeah.
Brad Marchand.
Absolutely.
Like as much as you what's crazy about Brad Marchand is how good he is. Like that's the other thing I think is important to a villain and like why I think Trouba's a decent one, like an emerging one. Cuz like they're good. They're not just goons that are out of the league in 2 years.
So I guess my question is, can the NHL find an answer to that? Or is it okay to just make a villain the face of the league? Tom Wilson, absolutely.
Yeah. He's a good one. I think if... I'm trying to think of a better one. I mean, like...
I think you can make an argument that some people turned Crosby into a villain.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Guys that are... LeBron James, let's take it back to that. Yep. Like, is it not easy as hell to hate LeBron James?
For sure.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. Can you make the face of the league a villain? I don't know. My instinct says no. I don't know.
For the record, it was confirmed that Zegras did not talk about his dad.
Yeah. It was. He said nothing.
My personal conspiracy theory was saying stuff about his girlfriend, but it wasn't his dad.
Zegras is actually an interesting one in this conversation, I think. Like you go back to the Tyson Nash stuff from last year where he was all mad about the showboating and hot dogging. Like, is there an argument to be made that Trevor Zegras is becoming a bit of a villain, like around the league? Like he didn't just in the way that he plays and just like I've never seen Siri. You didn't get that because I wasn't talking to you. Like I don't know what he said. I've tried to find out. I don't know. So I'm not defending what he said or anything like that. But it just in terms of becoming a villain, I've never seen a player react to something that was said to him on the ice the way that Troy Stetcher did. And like between apparently what he says when he's shit talking people and just the way that he kind of plays where he just makes guys look dumb out there. He's tried the Michigan like 10 times at this point. He's gotten it half of them. Is Trevor Zegras a villain?
I wouldn't put him at a villain status yet. Mostly because he's too dope to be a villain yet. But if he keeps it up, maybe he could become a villain for sure.
See, I almost like that. Like it's you could tell people from outside, like, yeah, watch this kid. Everybody hates him because he's so sick. And he just makes everyone look dumb all night long. This is my official campaign to paint Trevor Zegras as the skilled villain. Yeah.
The skilled
villain, if you will.
So good you hate him.
I mean, maybe a better reputation to have than Jordan Binnington, who everyone thinks is a punk, or Tyler Bertuzzi, who everyone hates for various bad reasons.
Mm-hmm.
he would be a different sort of villain because
Right.
there is something about him that's mischievous and
Yes.
childlike, though. I don't think he always has malicious intent. I was telling Jesse after the Anaheim game, I was in the Anaheim locker room instead of the Avs, and he was just loud. He was screaming, "Where's the pizza?" And he was doing his own play-by-play of some of the goals that were scored like he was a broadcast announcer. It was just a very loud personality. And most people in the room weren't really paying him much mind or like smiling, but no one was bothered by this. But he is very, I don't want to say immature, but
Animated.
It's maybe Anna, I don't know. It's a combination of things that I didn't think was bad. Like I didn't think this was bad, but I see why, if you're on the opposite side of it, why it might be annoying. But it really wasn't malicious in intent. Now, I can't speak to what happened with Stetcher, to be fair. That happened after the Anaheim game, too. So it was tough because I was sort of coming to his defense. Like, I think he's just a little misunderstood. He's really young. He acts like a child. It could be fun and entertaining, but I could see why it would annoy older players and old guard hockey people.
And see, that's why I think he might be a good first villain face of the NHL because he is so talented. But, like, even on nights where they've mic'd him up, like he's just out there talking and yelling and, you know, talking shit and making jokes and laughing and all that stuff. And I think you're right, Megan. Like, I think there are a lot of older players in the league who could be bothered by that. And then he goes and pulls a Michigan on him after toe dragging 3 guys and putting it through another one's legs. And it's just like, you hate him but like to kick his ass, you have to catch him. You know what I mean? And like
when you
he's a slippery little guy.
Player stick because he didn't know better, and
right
it's there's an innocence to it. Like I don't know how
and you straight ripped it out of that dude's hands.
Yeah, he did. And he's like, I don't know, I saw Bobby do it one time, Bobby Ryan do it one time, so I thought it was okay.
I'm officially petitioning to make him the villain of the NHL / the evil face.
I'm here for it. I'm here for the heel of the NHL. Confirmed.
Can someone just Photoshop me Trevor Zegras as like Darth Vader or something like that? Because
he seems like Hamburglar villain. Like not.
I was gonna say Darth Vader might be a little too badass. Yeah.
No.
What's a less
like Mojo Jojo from like Powder Puff Girls or something like that?
Needs to be shopped onto like Kenny Omega. He's absolutely a wrestling heel. All right. They even have similar hair. It's fine.
Yeah.
There is one other topic I want to touch on before we get out of here. And it's a bit of an interesting conversation because when Sid and Ovi kind of came to power and became the faces of the league.
Ooh, Swiper maybe. Sorry.
I think what helped Sid and Ovi's rise as the faces of the league were that there was a pretty clear passing of the torch, a changing of the guard in that era. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Gretzky had retired a handful of years ago, but you had players like Forsberg and Lindros whose careers petered out, unfortunately, due to injury. And it kind of just opened the path for new superstars to rise very quickly. And we haven't seen that in this era. Sid and Ovi continue to be extremely good, if not all world level hockey players. And you're left with this kind of clash of the greats of the last era still competing with the greats of the new era. Now, there's nothing you can do to stop that. I get that. But will we see a rise of a new face 3, 4, 5 years down the line when guys like Sid and Ovi start retiring?
So I said on Twitter, talking back and forth with someone that I personally, the way despite everything that we just talked about, I personally think that for the next 2 years, Alex Ovechkin is the face of the league. He is driving to break a record that people thought was unbreakable, would stand forever, that no matter how the league changed, the Wayne Gretzky, he has several, but goals was one of them that no one will ever touch. It's happening. Like the hunt is on for Ovi to break this record. And I think he kind of gets to be reinvigorated as the face of the league. And then once he breaks the record, in my opinion, that is when you will see this shift to the next generation, the next wave, because Crosby's still only 3 years removed from a Stanley Cup championship, and Ovechkin is chasing down the NHL's all-time goal record. Like, these guys are still making meaningful contributions to the league and to the sport. And until they stop doing that, I think that, no, you haven't seen the passing of the torch. Once that happens, I think that's when, I'll repeat myself. The passing of the torch happens.
Jesse,
what?
You ready to feel old?
No, I'm not. There's already a few things that have happened that are very
Penguins
upsetting.
Cup was 6 years ago.
When they went back to back?
Yep, 2017 was the second one.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, that does sound right. I just thought it was 2 back-to-backs in a row, but it was them, Washington, St. Louis, then Tampa, Colorado.
Yep.
All right. Well, what do I know? I just work here.
I don't think Sid will ever leave Pittsburgh, no.
I think he finished his career with the Avs. 1 year, 1 season with the Avs. I'm being dead serious. I've said this for years. I think he'll go through the end of that deal. It'll be this: does he retire? Does he not? I think he comes and plays 1 year with Nate because the Avs will be in a window, and he's going to say, "Can we do it once?" Cole Harbor, and then he hangs him up. You heard it here first. And then he'll sign a 1-day deal with the Pens, and he'll retire a Pen and all of that. But I think he'll take one last kick at the can with the Avs.
I think I'm leaving that where it was, Jesse. I'm not touching that.
I'll touch it again. Sid to the Avs as soon as his last year. His last year, Sidney Crosby to the Colorado Avalanche. It's February 6th. What day is it? February 8th. What is happening? I don't know what year it is. I don't know what day it is.
Eluded Jesse at this
He's a time traveler.
All I know is Sidney Crosby is coming to the Avs because I'm a time traveler and I've come from the future to tell you that Sidney Crosby is coming to the Avs.
I'm not a Sidney Crosby hater, so I have no issue with this. But I'm thinking about how it's easy to market 2 players like Ovechkin and Crosby who are on competitive teams, sort of in the height peak of them stepping into being the players that they are. And I think back to like when Tampa was looking at 3P, who of Tampa could have been the face of the NHL, and like were they trying to make anyone the face of the NHL? Because I do feel like that's a missed opportunity to have teams that are competitive in back-to-back years and not seek out somebody to market a little bit more. I think that this is a criticism of just kind of the whole NHL. Like, it's not specific to just Tampa, but I do think it's interesting that it was easy slam dunk to market Ovi and Crosby as they're coming up in their careers when they have competitive teams around them. But I think it's tough, like Edmonton having the failures that they have had. Austin Matthews, a very talented player, keeps hitting frustration in Toronto. Like, I think it's been tough to have the torch even passed. Like Jesse said.
You just said something, Megan, that actually you made 2 great points like 30 minutes apart, and they just connected in my mind. Because you mentioned easy, you said rivalries are easy to sell. As much as the NHL lost from the 05 lockout, one thing they did gain out of it was 2 generational players, 2 number 1 overalls coming into the league at the same time, and they were able to pit Crosby and Ovechkin against each other from day one of their careers. And if you go and look up their point totals, career to date, it's shocking how close they are. Like, it has been Crosby versus Ovechkin for so long, and it's just you never, since you haven't gotten like dueling 1 overalls like that, because 1 overalls always come straight into the league, and they tried to do it with McDavid and Eichel, but it was about as successful as the LeBron and Melo rivalry was. It's like, yeah, these are both very good players, but it's pretty obvious to everybody watching they're not on the same level. And so that's again, like I said, you said that earlier about rivalries, and then you were just talking about how easy it was to market them together. I do think that is something that factored into it, that the NHL was able to market it as Crosby versus Ovechkin 4 times a year, and how many times in the playoffs, Olympics, World Championships. It was never Russia and Canada. It was never Penguins and Capitals. It was never defending champs versus, it was Crosby and Ovechkin. The dueling hat tricks, comes to mind. There were just so many great moments that were built around Crosby versus Ovechkin. And I just don't know if you have any 2 players in the league right now that have that dynamic.
Yeah, it's tough with the Tampa thing. Yeah, they tried to do it a little bit with Kucherov, but I don't know. It just didn't really
bullshit.
land. Yeah, I mean that's an all-time interview, but
right. Well, their other problem was they won the cup and then Kucherov sat for 9 months.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, he also has effort issues at time, and I just don't know if he cares enough to be the face of the NHL.
It's just really hard. I even see people mentioning Bedard. If you saw his interview after WJC's, not saying he's not a great guy, not saying it wasn't super adult of him to say, hey, we're not talking about me right now, we're talking about our team. It still slots into the hockey media robot 101 right there.
Nate did it last year when everyone was trying to build up the MacKinnon versus McDavid narrative. He was like, yeah, no, I'm not too worried about that. We're trying to win the Western Conference final and blah, 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 blah. There's just another great Megan point from earlier in the show. You mentioned the drama. Like, what's the drama with these individual players? Again, the dueling hat tricks in that playoff series, Crosby and Ovechkin, that's drama. These 2 superstars are dragging their teams, kicking and screaming to the finish line all by themselves, and they're doing it up against each other. And we're watching these 2 guys literally make a game out of thin air just on their own merit. And I think you have individuals that do that. I think we've seen Cale Makar do that. I think we've seen Nathan MacKinnon do that. Connor McDavid does that a lot. But like there's no hat trick the other way, I think there was a lot of hope that you would get that in Avs Oilers Western Conference final, but the Avs were just so much better than Edmonton that really wasn't that competitive of a series. What's the drama?
Well, if you want to go to a game and watch a little bit of drama yourself, Game Time is the way to do it. Be sure to jump into Game Time with the link down in the description of the video. Over 15 million people have used it, and when you use the link down there, it helps us out a little bit too. You get tickets for up to 60% off of face value. So absolutely insane deal to go through Game Time and get in on the tickets that way. Their site and app are great. If you go into them, they have all the features. You can see where you're sitting. You can see the view from there. You can see all that stuff, which thankfully there's not really a bad seat in Ball Arena. But there are some buildings out there where you want to check your seat and make sure you're not staring at a pole instead of the action. So be sure to do that. Again, link down in the description to go to Game Time. If you're not using Game Time to get your tickets, unfortunately, we're actually sold out of game tickets on the party bus. But if you already have tickets, there are still some seats left on the bus if you want to ride down with us and ride back to the bar. It's only $20 to get a ticket on the bus, so it's literally cheaper than parking at the arena. And you get free beers on the bus too. So you're just making yourself a good deal. And you get to have a good time with us after the game. Come party at the bar. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but a team has never lost at Ball Arena during a party bus. The Nuggets are 4-0. The Avs are 2-0 when we do a party bus. So your odds of winning, seeing a game where the Avs win, pretty good. Just throwing it out there. That's all I'm saying. Either way, you can.
Now, if they lose, you know who to blame.
Oh yeah, 100%. We'll take that one. That's fine. That's on me. You can go to the DNVRlocker.com today to get your ticket on the bus if you want. I think that about does it. Unless you guys have any final thoughts you want to add.
I'm good.
All right, we're gonna get out of here for the day. Of course, a game tomorrow. You'll have full coverage, pregame, postgame, all that good stuff from us. So be sure to tune into that. Like and subscribe here on YouTube. That helps us out a ton. If you missed the YouTube video, you can always catch us as a podcast on whatever podcast platform you prefer. We appreciate all y'all, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.